The Exilari research vessel floated in the cold void of space, its sleek, silver hull reflecting the distant light of a nearby star. Captain Ralvik stood on the command deck, his six-fingered hands resting on the control panel as he watched the screen in front of him. A massive warship loomed ahead, its design unfamiliar and terrifying. It was human, and it was completely still, as if it were dead in space. Ralvik's crew had spent decades studying different species, gathering intelligence, and advancing their empire's knowledge of warfare. But humanity was different. The Galactic Council had declared them an anomaly, a species that defied logic and reason. Despite their short lifespans, they adapted faster than any other race. Despite their fragile biology, they thrived in the most dangerous environments. And despite their supposed inferiority, they had won wars against empires that had existed for thousands of years. Ralvik's orders were clear: observe, scan, and collect data. But something about this mission made him uneasy. There were stories about human warships, whispers among the council that they housed something unnatural. Weapons so advanced they broke the laws of physics. Defensive systems that reacted before an attack was even launched. No one knew how much was rumor and how much was truth. But the council demanded answers, and Ralvik's crew would provide them. Initiate the scan, Ralvik commanded. His science officer, Velran, hesitated for only a second before his claws tapped against the console, activating the ship's advanced sensors. A soft hum filled the room as waves of energy pulsed outward, invisible tendrils reaching toward the human vessel, probing its secrets. At first, everything seemed normal. The ship's external structure was heavily reinforced, designed for extreme punishment. Its weapon systems were far beyond anything the Xilari had seen before. Massive railguns, missile silos, and energy cannons lined its hull. But there was something else, something buried deep within the ship's core. Velran's screen flickered, symbols and warnings flashing in rapid succession. His tendrils twitched as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Captain, something is wrong. Ralvik turned sharply. What do you mean? The scan is returning data, but it's changing. It's like the ship is adapting to the scan, feeding us false information. Velran's voice was tense. This shouldn't be possible. No ship has defenses against passive scans. A sudden jolt ran through the Xilari vessel. The lights dimmed, and a deep guttural hum echoed through the ship. Crew members turned in confusion, their eyes wide with alarm. Ralvik's stomach twisted as a realization hit him. Something was pushing back. The human warship had detected them, and it was awake. Shut it down, Ralvik barked. Velran's fingers flew over the controls, but it was too late. The scan had triggered something, an automatic countermeasure, an artificial intelligence, or something far worse. The human warship's systems flared to life, and its once dead hull flickered with blue energy. A message appeared on the screen, written in bold, unrecognizable characters. But then, as if adjusting, the text shifted into Xilari script. You should know TAAVDUNET8. Ralvik's breath caught in his throat. The warship was communicating with them. No, not communicating. Warning them. The Xilari crew scrambled to disengage, but the warship wasn't letting go. Their sensors became flooded with unreadable data, their communications jammed by an overwhelming signal. It wasn't an attack in the traditional sense. It was psychological warfare. The human ship was inside their systems, rewriting, corrupting, overwhelming them with knowledge they could barely comprehend. The lights flickered again, and then silence. Ralvik turned to Velran. Status report. Velran's tendrils quivered. Captain, our ship is locked out. We have no control. Engines, weapons, even life support. The human warship is in command now. Ralvik's mind raced. How? This was just a scan. They hadn't even physically touched the human ship. And yet it had turned their own technology against them in seconds. The screen flickered again. A new message appeared. UAV-1 and menu T2LAV. Ralvik didn't need to be told twice. Activate emergency thrusters. Get us away from here. Valoran shook his head. We can't. They've disabled everything. We're trapped. Ralvik's heart pounded. He had made a mistake. A terrible, irreversible mistake. He had thought they could study humanity. He had thought they could dissect its secrets. But now, as the human warship turned its massive hull toward them, glowing with energy, he realized the truth. Humanity didn't just build warships. They built nightmares. The auxiliary vessel hung motionless in space, ensnared in the silent grip of the human warship. The crew sat frozen, their eyes fixed on the screen that still displayed the ominous message. UAV-1 menu T2LAV. But they couldn't leave. Their ship was dead, locked down by the warship's unseen influence. Engines offline. Weapons useless. Communications jammed. The auxiliary were stranded, staring into the void, knowing that something ancient and terrifying had turned its gaze upon them. Ralvik's breathing was shallow, his mind racing through possible solutions. Every second that passed felt heavier, like the crushing weight of a collapsing star. He turned to Valoran, whose tendrils trembled as he furiously worked the controls. Can you override it? Ralvik asked, barely keeping his voice steady. Valoran didn't look up. His fingers danced over the interface, but every command was met with the same cold response. Access denied. No, Valoran admitted, his voice tight with fear. Every system is compromised. It's not just locked. It's been rewritten. Our own ship doesn't recognize us anymore. Ralvik's stomach twisted. He had never heard of anything like this. This wasn't just a cyber attack. This was something beyond their understanding. The human warship wasn't just fighting back. It was controlling them, deciding their fate second by second. The screen flickered again. 30 Nindias. A deep, eerie silence filled the ship. The auxiliary crew members turned to their captain, waiting for orders that he didn't have. Panic spread like a virus, their survival instincts screaming at them to run, to fight, to do something. But there was nothing they could do. Then, without warning, the human warship moved. It had been stationary this whole time, looming in the darkness like a sleeping beast. Now it turned, its massive structure shifting with an unnatural smoothness. Its weapons were online now, fully armed, fully charged, and aimed directly at them. Ralvik felt cold dread crawl up his spine. He had seen warships before. He had commanded them. But this was different. It didn't feel like a ship. It felt like a predator. Valoran's screen flickered wildly. New symbols flooded the interface, incomprehensible warnings flashing like red alarms in the dark. His tendrils twitched violently as he tried to decipher them. "Captain," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's not just scanning us anymore. It's learning." Ralvik's heart pounded. Learning what? Valoran swallowed. Everything. And then, the warship spoke. It wasn't a transmission. It wasn't a message. The words didn't come through the usual channels. They simply appeared directly into their ship's systems, as if whispered by something lurking inside their own computers. TNCTONDS. Ralvik felt a surge of desperation. "Open a direct channel," he ordered. "We have to talk to them. We have to." Valoran shook his head. "There's nothing to open, Captain. They've already taken control of everything. If they wanted to speak to us, they would." Ralvik clenched his fists. There was no reasoning with this. No negotiations. The humans weren't giving them a choice. 5 Time was up. A deep, rumbling vibration rolled through the auxiliary ship. The lights dimmed. A low hum filled the air, like the sound of something vast and ancient waking up. The crew held their breath. Then, without explanation, the warship disengaged. Their systems flickered back to life. Engines, weapons, navigation. Communications remained silent, But everything else was restored. The human ship had let go. And just as suddenly as it had moved, it turned away, drifting back into the darkness. Ralvik didn't hesitate. Full reverse. Now. The auxiliary vessel roared to life, engines blazing as they pulled away at maximum speed. No one spoke. No one breathed. They just ran. As they fled, the final message from the warship appeared on their screen. Leave, and do not return. Ralvik didn't need to be told twice. The auxiliary vessel tore through space, pushing its engines to their limits. Ralvik's claws gripped the armrests of his command chair. His eyes locked on the growing distance between them and the human warship. The crew remained deathly silent, as if speaking would somehow draw the monster's attention back to them. Velren's fingers trembled over the console as he ran every scan possible. He needed to know what had just happened, how their systems had been hijacked, how the warship had seized control of their own ship like it was nothing. But the deeper he looked, the more confused he became. "It's gone," Velren whispered. Ralvik turned sharply. "What's gone?" Velren hesitated, his tendrils twitching in unease. "Everything. There's no trace of interference in our systems. No viruses, no corrupted data, no signs we were ever hacked. It's as if nothing happened." Ralvik's jaw tightened. He didn't believe that. He had seen their ship get torn apart from the inside, every command overridden by an unseen force. The human warship had seized them, held them in its grip, and then let go. But why? Ralvik leaned forward. "Are they following us?" Velren checked the scanners, his screen flickering with distant energy signatures. The human warship remained where they had left it, floating silently in the void. It made no move to pursue. No threats. No signs of aggression. "They're just sitting there," Velren said, his voice barely above a whisper. Ralvik didn't relax. This wasn't over. He could feel it. The auxiliary ship continued its retreat, but something nagged at the back of Ralvik's mind. If the humans had truly wanted them dead, they would have fired. They could have erased the auxiliary ship from existence without effort, but they hadn't. Instead, they had sent a message. "Leave, and do not return." It was a warning. But a warning against what? Ralvik knew the auxiliary high command would demand answers. He knew they wouldn't accept silence. The humans had just demonstrated an impossible level of control over technology, far beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever seen. That information alone was priceless and dangerous. The auxiliary government wouldn't ignore this. They would send more ships, more scientists, more spies. They would try to uncover the secrets of the human warship. Ralvik exhaled slowly. They won't stop. A shiver ran through him as a dark realization settled in his mind. If the Council keeps pushing, will the humans push back? Ralvik sat in the dimly lit briefing room, his claws drumming anxiously against the table. The auxiliary high command had wasted no time after receiving his report. They demanded an immediate debriefing, and now he found himself facing a row of cold, calculating eyes on the holoscreen in front of him. Admiral Sorvin, his scales a deep crimson, leaned forward. "You encountered a single human warship, yet you returned empty-handed. Explain yourself, Captain." Ralvik took a slow breath, choosing his words carefully. It was unlike anything we've ever seen. The ship, no, the intelligence within the ship, hijacked our systems in an instant. No trace of entry, no lingering code. It controlled us as if we were an extension of itself. And then it let us go. The admirals exchanged glances, their mandibles clicking in quiet discussion. Finally, Zorkin spoke again. "And you believe it was intentional?" Ralvik's claws tightened. "Yes, Admiral. It wasn't an accident. The humans knew exactly what they were doing. And they didn't destroy us because they wanted us to leave and warn the rest of the Council." Silence filled the chamber. Then another voice spoke. Admiral Verith, older and more measured. A show of power. Ralvik nodded. Yes, but it was also a warning. Zorvan's expression darkened. Then we must act swiftly. If the humans possess technology beyond our understanding, we must acquire it. Ralvik's heart sank. He had expected this. The Exilari were not a species that backed down in the face of strength. They would see the humans' power as a challenge, one that must be overcome. Verith spoke again, her tone heavy. You believe further interference will provoke them. Ralvik hesitated. Admiral, I believe we are standing at the edge of something far more dangerous than we realize. The humans could have erased us from existence, but they didn't. That means one of two things. Either they are merciful, or they simply don't see us as a threat. Zorvan scoffed. Then we must prove otherwise. Ralvik clenched his jaw. With all due respect, Admiral, that would be a mistake. Zorvan's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. Your fear clouds your judgment, Captain. This is an opportunity. Ralvik felt a deep, cold dread settle in his chest. No, he thought. This is a catastrophe waiting to happen. But he knew his warnings would go unheard. The Exilari would return. And this time, the humans wouldn't let them leave. The Exilari High Command wasted no time. Within hours of Ralvik's report, a fleet had been mobilized. Not a scouting party, not a diplomatic envoy. A fleet prepared for war. It was clear now. The Exilari didn't just want to understand the human warship. They wanted to capture it. Ralvik stood on the bridge of the Valfar, watching as the strike force formed up around him. Dozens of warships, bristling with weapons and advanced shielding, ready to subdue a single human vessel. It was madness. He had seen what that ship could do. And yet here they were, moving in formation, confident in their strength. Admiral Zorvan's voice came over the comms. We approach the human ship. All forces, prepare for engagement. Disable its systems and board immediately. Ralvik's stomach twisted. They were making the worst mistake in Exilari history. The fleet reached the edge of the system, scanners sweeping ahead. There it was, the human warship, still drifting in space, as if waiting for them. It made no move, no aggressive action. Foolish creatures, Zorvan muttered. They don't even know we're here. Ralvik wasn't so sure. Then, without warning, every ship in the fleet went dark. Total system failure. Weapons, shields, engines, everything shut down at once. Emergency lights flickered weakly. Consoles screamed error messages, but nothing responded. It was as if the fleet had been plucked from reality and thrown into a void. Then the human ship spoke. A deep, cold voice echoed through every ship's communication systems. You were warned. The fleet drifted, helpless, trapped in the grasp of something they couldn't see or fight. Ralvik's claws dug into the control panel. They had walked into a trap. And now, the humans had them exactly where they wanted. Panic spread through the Exilari fleet like wildfire. Officers barked frantic orders. Technicians scrambled to restore power, but nothing worked. Every system was completely dead. Ralvik clutched the console, his eyes locked on the massive human warship, still unmoving, still silent, but undeniably watching. It had done this. Somehow, it had disabled an entire fleet without firing a single shot. Admiral Zorvan's voice broke through the chaos. Reboot emergency systems. Get our ships back online. The engineers tried. They rerouted power, bypassed security protocols, even attempted full system resets. Nothing worked. Then the human warship moved. Slowly, deliberately, it drifted forward, its dark hull gleaming against the distant starlight. There was no visible weapon fire, no energy signatures, just an overwhelming sense of doom. Then came the second transmission. Leave. Now. A deep, resonating force accompanied the words, like a command from something far beyond their understanding. Suddenly, one of the Exilari warships lit up with power. Engines roared to life. Systems flickered back online. But it wasn't them doing it. Without warning, The ship turned on its allies. Weapons primed. Targeting systems locked on. And then, it fired. The auxiliary fleet erupted into chaos. One of their own ships, under some unknown control, had just launched a full barrage at its own side. Explosions rippled across the hull of nearby vessels, shields unable to activate in time. The fleet had become its own worst enemy. Ralvik's breath caught. The humans weren't just disabling them. They were proving a point. They weren't trapped with the auxiliary. The auxiliary were trapped with them. The auxiliary fleet was in full retreat, but the nightmare was far from over. Their systems were still unresponsive, their weapons useless. The human warship had shut them down without effort. And now, it was showing them just how helpless they truly were. One by one, their own ships turned against them. Entire cruisers, still trapped in the humans' grip, fired upon their allies. It was chaos. Explosions filled the void, debris scattered, and the auxiliary command structure crumbled. Admiral Xorvan's voice was hoarse with desperation. "We have to abandon ship. Get to the escape pods." But even that was impossible. The airlocks wouldn't open. The life support controls were locked. The humans controlled everything. And then, a final transmission came through. "This is your only warning. Do not return." With those words, the human warship finally released its grip. The hijacked auxiliary vessels fell silent. The power returned to the fleet. But it was too late. Half their armada was gone. Ralvik stared at the wreckage, his body trembling. The humans hadn't destroyed them out of rage or vengeance. They had done it to send a message. They could have wiped out the entire fleet. Instead, they let survivors escape, to spread fear. The auxiliary wouldn't recover from this. The galaxy wouldn't recover from this. Because now, everyone knew the truth. The humans weren't just dangerous. They were untouchable. The survivors of the auxiliary fleet limped back to their homeworld, their ships barely holding together. Word of the disaster had spread before they even arrived. The galactic networks were already buzzing with reports, intercepted transmissions, and terrifying whispers. The humans had won without firing a single shot. Admiral Xorvan stood before the High Council, his once proud posture now weighed down by defeat and humiliation. He tried to explain what had happened, but the truth was too much to bear. They took control of our fleet," he admitted, his voice hollow. "They turned our ships against us. We were helpless." The council chamber fell silent. The auxiliary, once a dominant force in the galaxy, had been reduced to a cautionary tale. The news spread far beyond their borders. Other empires, once eager to challenge humanity, fell silent. Treaties were rewritten, military plans scrapped. The Galactic Council convened in an emergency session, not to discuss retaliation, but how to ensure they never angered the humans again. Meanwhile, aboard the human warship, the crew watched as the auxiliary's retreating forces disappeared from their sensors. The captain leaned back in his chair, satisfied. "Think they got the message?" one officer asked. The captain smirked. "Oh, they got it. Loud and clear." Deep in the void of space, humanity remained untouched. They hadn't just won a battle. They had changed the galaxy forever.